Does bookkeeping have to be expensive or complicated in order for you to have a great system for your bookkeeping? It doesn't. Today, I'm going to teach you specifically how you can use something as simple and as free as Google Sheets or Word Excel in order for you to have a good bookkeeping record system. If you're a small business owner, you can do this if this is what you want to put your time and efforts into. And if you are a bookkeeper, then you can also use this for your small business clients in order to keep track of their bookkeeping needs. Here's the thing, things like QuickBooks and Xero, they are great programs to buy into, and I'm not by any means telling you to not maybe explore those routes. But if you're just starting out, or if you feel like you just kind of want to get a taste of what bookkeeping is going to look like and what the needs are going to be, something free like Google Sheets is a great tool to get your feet wet into what recording transactions really is like. The thing about bookkeeping is that it doesn't need to be fancy in order to be effective. The IRS states that any business needs a bookkeeping system, but they don't create mandates on what that bookkeeping system has to look like. You need to keep a record of transactions and try to categorize that to the best of your ability, but it doesn't have to be fancy. So today's tutorial is going to be specifically related to what this system could look like and how easy and simple it is to use formulas within Google Sheets and Excel to calculate totals for you, to take some of the calculator, pen and pencil, old system of bookkeeping out of the way. So if you've never been on my channel before, this is Realistic Bookkeeping. I'm Rachel Brown, and before I get too wordy, let's get into it. By the way, I will have a link for the Excel file that I'm going to be using down below. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel if you find that this is helpful, or leave me a comment if you need more videos like this one. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, you guys, so as we are opened up in a new Google Sheet, and that's what I'm going to use for the purposes of this video. However, you can convert a Google Sheet to an Excel file. But for this Google Sheet, there's absolutely nothing in it. And just in case you don't know any basics of Google Sheets, it's really good to just play around in it for a little bit. So you'll notice something that's important when you're doing a file like this for a bookkeeping client, in my opinion, is understanding that you can add new sheets to a Google Sheet file. So you'll see down here, it says sheet number 1. And if I come over here to this add sheet button, it's just a plus, then it'll give me as many sheets as I might need. And something that might be useful for this for your bookkeeping is you could create a sheet for each month of transactions if that's how you prefer to do it. You can also just have one sheet with all transactions included in it and make sure that it is categorized and sorted by date chronologically. So you don't have to have 12 different sheets in order to make sure that your transactions are easy to track by month. However, you might want one sheet for your transactions and for your banking needs, and I could double click here and make this transactions. And then the second sheet might be nice to be a profit and loss statement. And what we can do is in between these two sheets, we can actually have them talk to each other through formulas that will pull information from one sheet into a next. Okay, so when you're in Google Sheets, you can obviously type words as well as numbers, and you can format these things to be as beautiful or as simple as you need them to be. I give myself kind of a little bit of formatting so that not this whole blank thing looks a little bit more usable. Okay. So all I did was maybe spend 30 seconds formatting so that this looks a little bit nicer to me. This is usable and friendly to look at visually with your eyes, which although that might not seem like a big deal, it does matter when you're starting to look at these files for usable information. Aesthetically, you need it to be pleasing to your eye, enough so that you can actually look through it and it doesn't look too tiny or you can't read what it says. Okay, so all I've done was I made 4 basic columns here. I made a transaction description, a date, amount, and a transaction type. And this column is going to be really important because the transactions you're going to fill in given receipts or maybe bank statements or maybe a check register or a check ledger. But you as their bookkeeper or you as your business owner, you need to focus on the transaction type and categorizing them by IRS regulations. This doesn't have to be scary. It really is more about you being comfortable and understanding the types of categories that a transaction could fall into. This is something that I'm going to start to teach you some Excel and Google Sheets formatting and formulas is that you can have Google Sheets be really helpful to you so that you don't have to constantly go back to the IRS guidelines and check what type of categories exist. So here's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn how to do something called data validation. And what this means is that each of these boxes below transaction type are going to have a drop-down menu for you to select what a transaction might fall into. So I'm going to show you that really quickly. What we're going to do is I'm just going to click on one cell here, and I'll show you how we apply this formula to one cell. And when you click on that, now you're going to go up to where it says data, and you're going to go down to data validation. What this is saying, the cell range that you've clicked on is in our transactions sheet. So this transactions with an exclamation mark means it's pulling from the transaction sheet in Google Sheets that we're in cell D2. That's the one that I clicked on. And then it says criteria, list from a range. I don't want to list from a range. I want a list of items. And then here is where I'm going to type in the list of categories, of tax categories that I want are as options for transactions as I go through and classify them as a bookkeeper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that in here, but don't worry, I will have a list of all of these options later on in this video for you to copy for your own use. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. So I have entered all of the types of transaction categories that I would like as options as I go through and describe transactions and categorize them. And then I'm going to make sure that it's clicked to show the drop-down list in the cell and hit save. And all I've done is for one cell, I have made this option. Just wanted you to see where we're using this. So now let's say that I automatically had a transaction that was put in here. Maybe I was given a receipt by the business owner. So now what I need to do in order to make sure that this McDonald's receipt is categorized, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on the drop-down menu and say, well, this transaction is most likely meals and entertainment. And now I have what I've spent categorized to a specific category. And that really is one of the biggest things for bookkeeping, is to make sure that not only are your transactions there for record, but they're also calculated in the right way so that a business can deduct the right expenses that they've made through the fiscal year. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this not just a drop-down menu or option for one cell, but I want all of the cells in this column to have that. I can go back to this one specific cell that I've given this option for. I can go back to data and data validation. And instead of just having it be D2, you can put this little colon symbol right next to here. I'm going to show you again, D2 right next to it. And I can make it go to D100. And so now what that is going to do is I hit save, is it's going to give all the ones from D2 all the way down to D100, which I don't even think right here, D100 has this drop-down menu option. And you'll have the same options over and over again. You could, for the next transaction, it could be bank charges and interest. And for the fourth one down, maybe it's meals and entertainment again. And so you'll have those options at your fingertips to use for all of them. Now, why this is going to be important is because you are now going to be able to pull information from this sheet over to the profit and loss statement by getting Google Sheets to sum up all of the expenses within a certain category. And that's really going to save you a lot of time and effort. Now, before I do that, I'm going to kind of go back here for a second. I want to teach you some very, very, very basics of math in Google Sheets. So what I'm going to do is over here to the side, I'm just going to teach you a couple of things, and I'm going to give myself a list of examples. I'm actually going to fill in some transactions so that I can use them as examples over to the side. So all I have here are some literally made up transactions, and just as a blurb here really quickly, McDonald's and Subway would not actually be tax deductible for a business unless they were specified to be a business lunch where you were meeting a client. And generally not 100% of that expense is tax deductible, but generally it's about 50%. So just want to give you a quick blurb on that, so you're not trying to take off hundreds and hundreds of dollars every time you go to Subway or McDonald's as a business owner. Now, to learn some of these basics of formulas in Excel and Google Sheets, what you need to understand is that in order for Google Sheets to pull information and do something with it, you always have to start with an equal sign. So you'll see I've typed in the equal sign, and now Google Sheets knows that I'm about to tell it to do something instead of me just typing in an amount or typing in a word. So the one that's most useful for basic accounting is sum. So that's literally the word SUM. And then you'll see that because Google Sheets knows I'm doing a formula, it's actually going to give me a list of all of these things. And I don't need it to do that right now. I just need it to sum or add together some values. And so this might give me a total of several different transactions, or maybe the whole list of transactions. And so what I want to do next is I want to enter into parentheses what I want it to sum. And there's a really easy way to do this. Once you've done that parentheses, you can actually just go click on whatever, I'm just dragging that across whatever cells that I want it to total. So if I wanted it to total all of those, I'm also then going to close the parentheses. Google Sheets will do this for you if you forget, and then hit enter. And now what you'll see is that this number, this total that they've given me, maybe I'll even put total beside it, make this bold. That total is made up of specifically the numbers that are over here in the list, right? Now, what if I said, oh, that rent bill was wrong. It wasn't 150, it was 145. I don't know if you've noticed, but this total changed. It changed by the $5 that I changed that amount for. Okay. Now you have to make sure that whatever you're summing, whatever range that you've put in there is correct. So if I went and I forgot that I'd already set that to be just those 4 cells, now when I enter a new one for travel website, and let's see, this was on the 1st of August, and that was $15, and that was travel. This didn't change at all. $231.51 didn't change, even though I put a new total underneath. Well, that's because if I double click on this cell, it is not adding in that cell there. I only did C2 through C5. And just in case you don't know what that's referencing, C is the column and 2, 3, 4, 5 are the row numbers. If I wanted it to add in that $15 that I added, I'm going to need to go and make this go to C6. Or you could make it go to C100. And now when I put in a new one here for another McDonald's, on the same 8/1/2021 for $20, it's now going to add that to that total because I've made sure that that sum is the entire column, or at least through C100, so that every time I don't have to keep going back and changing it. So sum is really important and useful for bookkeeping. You can do the same thing with, you can subtract things. So let's say that I wanted this total to now be a subtotal, and I wanted to take out, I wanted it to be this exact same amount. I want it to be the $266.51 from above, but I wanted to subtract the professional fees here. Well, now it is the total of all of the things in that column, but minus that one professional fee. So you can also subtract things. What I would say is that it's really good to play around with this and kind of see, not a client's books or not in your own business books, but make a spreadsheet specifically for you to play around in and make sure that you can get your feet wet. And you know what? You could even go up to the spreadsheet title and put playground. And this is where you're literally playground bookkeeping. And that way you know that this is where you can go and test things out to see if you feel like they're going to work for you or not. The next thing that I'm going to teach you is about how to pull information from this sheet to a profit and loss statement. What I've done in my profit and loss statement sheet is I've really just made this super basic in order for me to categorize all the totals from my transactions sheet. And in a profit and loss statement, essentially the basic idea, if you've never had one made for your business before, or if you've never made one as a bookkeeper, is literally to show what a business has made, what they've spent, and whether they have profited or they have loss in that month or within that given time range. So what you want to be able to do here is you want to make nice totals so that you can look at, have you made something? Have you lost money? And if you've made or lost money, where have you made or lost that money? Did you spend way more in advertising than you should have? Did you spend more in office expenses than you should have? Or maybe you're really proud of yourself because your repairs and maintenance are low within that given time frame. So what I'm going to show you is going to sound really complicated at first. But what this is meant to do is it's meant to give you a formula to pull from the transactions, all the nitty gritty through receipts or through your bank statement that you filled out in the transaction sheet, and pull it over here to make a nice pretty picture for you without you going back and forth over and over and over again. Since you've already made a category for each transaction, now we can put the totals where they need to go in the expenses. So what I'm going to do before I actually make any of the numbers appear in the columns over here to the left, I'm just going to paste here in a cell for you so that you can see really quickly what the formula is going to look like. And I'm going to make this print a little bit bigger so that you can see it really easily here. So the formula, and you'll notice that this isn't pulling any information because I didn't put the equal sign at the beginning. That's really important. The equal sign at the beginning is going to make this really do something. But right now, I just want you to see the words and understand what this means. And at the beginning of this, it says sum if. So this is very similar to the formula that we used before where we're adding things together, but it's only going to add things if something else happens. Now, let me explain the rest of the formula. It's going to add things together if they are in the transactions sheet. So see how that transactions matches the sheet name down here? It has to exactly. And the exclamation mark behind it lets Google Sheets know that it is talking about a sheet and not a cell or something like that. So it's going to go to the transaction sheet and it's going to look through D2 through D100. Let me show you where that was. D2 through D100 are all of these cells. So that formula is going to come over to this sheet and look in those cells and see if they say this word. So there's a comma and then in quotes it says advertising. So this specific formula I'm showing you would go to those columns, go to those cells and see if they match advertising, which is one of our expense categories. If it matches advertising, what this formula says to do next is take all of the things from that transaction sheet from cell C2 to C100 and add them together. Let me show you where C2 through C100 is. That is this column. So I clicked C2 through C100. You could make this C1000 if you wanted it to be that big, but it's just going through all of those things. I don't have that many transactions in here, so I didn't need the column to go from C2 to C1000. 100 would suffice. C8 would be fine as of right now. But so let me explain this formula one more time. It's going to pull in that other sheet. It's going to come back to this one called transactions, and it's going to look in this column. And if that column says the word advertising, then it is going to go here and pull that amount and add them together. So I would know how much I spent in advertising. So let me show you what that does when I put an equal sign in front of it and put it in my advertising category. If I put this equal sign and then paste that formula and hit enter, it now gives me a $0. Why does it give me a $0 total? Well, if I go back to my transactions, I have nothing here that's in advertising. But what if I said that McDonald's was advertising? We obviously know it's not, but just for the sake of the argument, let's see what I now have in my profit and loss statement. Well, I have $20 now because I have a $20 expense of advertising. So let me show you how you would change this if you were now doing bank charges and interest. Well, you're still going to put the equal sign in this column or in this cell. Enter in our formula, but now instead of advertising in quotes, I'm going to be looking for things that say bank charges and interest. Into my quotes, enter, but I still see a 0. That's because if I go to my transactions, I don't have anything that are bank charges and fees or interest. What about insurance? Same thing. I don't have any insurance right now. Let's go to meals and entertainment though, because we know we have some expenses within that category. Equal sign for my formula. I'm going to go up and insert this formula that we've created. But again, I don't want advertising in quotes. Instead, I'm looking for anything that was meals and entertainment, end quotes, enter. And look, we don't need to do the autofill. Don't want it to do that right now. But now it says $27.76. Let's see if that's true. Let's go back to my transactions sheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have an equal sign over here in a random cell, and I'm going to total in, this is a meals and entertainment cell, plus here's the other one that's meals and entertainment. Let's just see if that total matches. It does. $27.76 is exactly what the other sheet said with the formula pulling that information together. But see, if you were going to make a statement, a profit and loss statement within this sheet that did that, you'd have to go through and select all the ones that were meals and entertainment, whereas this one pulls it nice and pretty from the previous sheet for you. What I'm also going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and format this entire column to be currency so that it looks nice and neat with my money symbols. And then I'm going to go down to this total here, and I'm going to make sure that that total is equal to the sum of this entire column, so that once I fill them all out, it's going to total them for me. Now, let's just say I'm going to enter some numbers here that my income for the time range I'm looking at was $500 in cash, and let's say that in checks I had $1,420. I could again make a total here to be the sum of my cash and checks. Enter. And now what I think is pretty important is that this profit and loss box that I've put over here, I want that to show me whether I made something or I lost something. So this cell is going to be equal to what I made, that total, minus what I spent, and is going to tell me that, look at that, I have profited $18,072.24. Now, this isn't fleshed out because I didn't fill in all these other categories, but this is really just to give you a perspective of what you could do and how this could round out something that's going to categorize things really quickly for you. And that now, once you have this set up, you can come back to the transactions, and as you enter things here, it's going to change that other sheet without you going back to it at all. Okay, you guys, I really hope that this has been helpful. It's been a lot of information crammed into one. I am planning on making more videos similar to this style in the future, but to be honest, for Excel, this is all that you need. You guys, please go click down below and find this template. Hopefully you can play around with it and make it the way that you want it for your business. Hit subscribe. I'm Rachel Brown. This is Realistic Bookkeeping, and we'll see you next time.